Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. It's a Thursday. There'll probably be some groovy music involved. Jimmy Akin will be here second hour and we'll do an open forum. In this hour, we have a very special guest and a great topic. As a matter of fact, we literally, not figuratively, literally could do this topic every day and it would bring new stuff, new things to talk about, new insights, new calls. And so we welcome that from you. If you want to make a call, 888-318-7884. Our special guest is affiliate apologist here at Catholic Answers, now in studio with us. Usually we connect with her over the internet, but right here in Southern California with us, Simone Riscala. Simone, thank you very much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. It's so much better being in person.
Yes, it is better being in person. That's definitely true. That's what none all of us here at Catholic Answers had to look up the word propinquity because Chris Check says it all the time, and it means being in person. It's just a fancy way of saying being in person. But we're going to talk with Simone about what does it mean to be a Christian. And I seriously, that could be the title of this show, and we could do it every day. And we'll come at it any direction you'd like with your questions for Simone. 888-318-7884. Before we get to the topic, you are the Director of Development, of Program Development, the Program Development Director, the Program Development Coordinator.
I'm getting a new title. I'm the Evangelizing Innovator at Endow.
No, you're just making that up. That's like an Elon Musk type title.
No, it's a Pat Lencioni working genius title. It is my working genius, Evangelizing Innovator.
Is that what you are?
That's what I am at Endow. But that's not my official title. I'm the Director of Program Growth, which is not...
That's practically almost what I said. And what is Endow? Tell people what Endow is so that
Endow, it's a Catholic women's apostolate. If you are a woman, you are Catholic, and you want to cultivate your unique feminine genius by studying important documents of the Catholic Church, check out Endow, ENDOW, endowgroups.org.
For Catholic women, all over the place. There's study groups and all kinds of stuff
all
like
over
that.
The world.
You then are of the controversial, old-fashioned opinion that there is a thing called a woman.
Yes. I know.
You're
old
bold.
School.
You are bold, Simone.
Old school.
Old school of that one. All right, so what does it mean to be a Christian?
I mean, you tell me. I think that the thing that's weird about that question is that we are in the church and we still have to kind of talk about that. Like, we still don't know because we are a church that is largely unevangelized, which is what the new evangelization is all about, which is just our leaders and our Pope saying, hey, we've forgotten Christ. We need to re-encounter him so that we can go out and do regular evangelization and get non-baptized people out there.
Yeah.
So that is... The authority on this for me is Pope Benedict, because he has a series of homilies that he's compiled into a book called What It Means to Be Christian. And he has a book coming out after his death called What is Christianity?
Oh, we're looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
Look, he wrote it while he was alive, though.
Yeah, and he's not going to release it till
now.
He's like, what?
I assumed he wrote
I say
it while
some
he was
things
alive.
in there that I want to make sure I'm not around to...
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
The number is 888-318-7884 if you want to get in on this conversation. But we have arguments within the Christian church about what it means to be a Christian. We have a very difficult time sometimes explaining to non-Christians what it is we're up to. In many cases, to explain why we're not a threat. That was what the early church had to do a lot. I'm sure that's what the church in China tries to do, or North Korea, or wherever governments are, or California, wherever there's radical governments that are anti-Christian. But so we need to have some working explanation of what it is. So
Yeah.
let me propose one possibility.
Sure.
It's a moral system. It's a system of morals.
Failed.
I failed?
You failed.
I knew I was going to fail, though. I just want you to know that.
I mean,
Okay,
I think that's what most of the world thinks Christianity is.
Okay.
Yeah, that we have the best philosophy, we have the best system of ethics. Maybe they don't think it's the best; they probably think it's the worst. But that's what Christianity is. Christianity is that group of people that thinks you're supposed to live this way, and if you don't live this way, then you're not a Christian. And the tricky thing is that that's not true. We do have a system of ethics and rules that we're supposed to live by. Jesus says, "If you love me, you'll keep my commandments." And here they are. But I really like what Pope Benedict says in the first encyclical he wrote as Pope, God is Love, Deus Caritas Est, where he says that a Christianity is not just an intellectual system or a philosophical system, but it's the encounter with a person who gives life a great horizon and a decisive direction. So the meaning of Christianity then is first and foremost this encounter with the person of Jesus Christ. That's a beginning of an answer to what it means to be a Christian.
You know what that sounds like? An encounter with a person that gives life a definitive meaning and direction? It sounds like marriage.
Yeah.
It sounds like...
Like love.
Oh, that's... okay.
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
And that's what it is. So you wouldn't say that you got married so that you follow the rules. Like you wouldn't say, oh, I married my wife so that I wouldn't cheat on her. But you know that...
But marriage involves not cheating on her.
Marriage involves not cheating
So there
on
is
her.
a moral aspect to it, but that's not what it is. Not just an undertaking of morals.
Yeah. So the church's moral teachings, which is, simply saying this is what a human person is, and this is what the way that they should live that contributes to their human flourishing, right? And you want human beings to flourish and to live according to their nature so that they can be in this relationship with the God who loves them, right? You want to show up well. You want to show up well to your marriage. You want to show up
Right. Yeah.
But you wouldn't say that was the point of it,
What about thinking of Christianity as not so much a moral system, but a system, or something that has to do with our feelings? That is, that it's a way of feeling more disposed towards other people, or a way of being more emotionally loving, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not that, but it's not just that either.
Okay.
I like what Pope Francis says in, where does he say it in? Is it Evangelii Gaudium? I can't remember where he says it, but he says that Christianity, unless it's a pilgrimage with Christ to the Father, you reduce it to a sort of therapy. And,
okay.
And it's not just that. So you have what we talked about before, which is moralism on the one hand. So reducing the faith to just like a set of rules that you have to follow, and check, which of course nobody can keep perfectly. So then everybody wants to fail out of the Christian thing, because if the Christian thing is just if it was just about moral coherence, we would all fail.
Yeah. And that's no fun.
And then on the other extreme, if it's just about my feelings, and that's going to lead us nowhere, because we know that our feelings can lead us down some very dangerous and unhealthy places. And our feelings aren't always great reflections of reality. So the Christian faith is not one of those two reductions, but it involves both of those things, both our reason and our emotions engaged in a relationship.
Okay, you keep coming back to the relationship part, the encounter part, all of that. And you get this from a lot of this you get from the book that you mentioned, what it means to be a Christian?
Yeah. I mean, I think for my own story, Sai, I could say that growing up that I loved Jesus, but I didn't quite fully, it was like I love Jesus and I got to follow these rules, and somehow these go together. And again, that's not exactly wrong, but it wasn't until I had an encounter with Christians themselves who loved me unconditionally and invited me unconditionally into their life, into their community, that I thought, oh, I think this is closer to what the Christian thing is.
Yeah.
Until I had that encounter, I don't think that I knew that. And I don't know that you can know what Christianity really is until you have actually had that encounter with people.
No, it would be like, again, to use my earlier comparison, it would be like saying you know what marriage is without ever marrying anyone.
Yeah.
You can have
talking about falling in love without actually ever knowing what that is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let me give you another idea about Christianity, that essentially Christianity is Jesus has sacrificed himself for me. I associate myself with that sacrifice through faith, and that means I'm going to heaven.
Yeah, so Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, in his series of 3 homilies he gave in the 1960s that were compiled into a book called What It Means to Be a Christian, which I can always keep going back to this book because it's so good, back to basics. And he'll say that Christianity is not taking out a like a passport to heaven. Like it's not like, oh, I've got the Catholic stamp, and
Yeah,
I got my
yeah.
Catholic, and I get in. He's like, that's not what this is, right?
Yeah.
And so he has part of a homily where he talks about the faith, the meaning of Christianity as, and he says it like this. He says, in fact, in a certain way, one becomes a Christian not for one's own sake, but for the sake of the other. So it's not just like I'm in now. Good luck, everybody else.
And I'm saved. Okay, I got saved.
I got saved, but actually, in a certain sense, it's faith as service.
Wow. Okay, so that brings us back to your Simone's lived experience of it was Christian community. It was the encounter of community that loved and cared about you that put you onto this idea there's something else about this Christianity. It's not this moral system. It's not this therapeutic thing. It's not just I'm saved and now I can go to heaven.
Right.
There's something else here.
Yeah, there's something else here, and there's a becoming of myself that happens in the context of this relationship. I think it's really interesting that the first part of his homily in What It Means to Be a Christian is all about the book of Job,
Yeah.
where he's like, hey, and again, he's answering that question. He's taking us on this path of what it means to be a Christian. And he goes, okay, well, the beginning of answering this question of what it means to be a Christian is to look at Job, who had these horrible things happen to him and was able to go to God in all of his kind of not very pious emotions and words and say, hey,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah. Right.
What's going on here? What's going on? And
So in a certain sense, complaint to God is the beginning of
oh yeah
of the religious life.
Yeah, exactly. And seeking him out, right?
Yeah.
And he says, he in the book of Job, God is mad at Job's friends who are like, well, you must have done something wrong, so you need to like repair or just, and really try to get Job to not confront God in all of his questioning and all of his desire and all of his like what's going on here. And Pope Benedict brings up dates like he'll say, let's look at 1914, let's look at 1918, let's look at 1939, let's look at 1945. Can we really say that after Christmas happened that the Prince of Peace reigns? How can we say that when there's still so much suffering in the world?
Yes.
How
can we? I'm going to ask you that one because I would really like an answer to that, Simone. We're talking about what it means to be a Christian. If you want to, and you can be Catholic, not Catholic, you can be Christian, not Christian, and call, and we will have that conversation with you. We do have callers on the line, and I am going to get to them right when we get back. Simone Rizkallah is our guest. She works at Endow. And I'm not even trying to say that her title, but it's an apostolate that helps Catholic women have in-depth studies and conversations about the documents of the Catholic Church. The number to call if you want to have this conversation, what it means to be a Christian, 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Save the date. Saturday, August 26th is the day, and Birmingham, Alabama is the place for the 2023 EWTN Family Celebration. We're celebrating Mother Angelica's love for the Eucharist, and join us to mark the centennial year of Mother's birth. Make your plans now to attend this free event. More details coming soon at our Family Celebration webpage, EWTN.com/Family Celebration.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Simone Rizkallah, our guest, and coming up in the future, I don't know when, but coming up in the next weeks or months, we'll have a focus episode, because we recorded that this afternoon, about confirmation. And if the sacrament of confirmation is, you're like kind of like this, what is the sacrament of confirmation? This is the perfect episode for you. So look for that. Simone Riscala on confirmation on Catholic Answers Focus. Right now we're talking about what does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean? When you get right down to it, I feel like in a certain way, nobody knows what it means to be a Christian.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the mystery of faith is that when you try to describe a relationship with a God that we know less about than more about,
Yeah.
it's always going to be a little awkward.
Yeah,
but we can
right.
say some things about it.
Yeah,
And,
right.
And I really appreciate what Pope Benedict has to say about it.
In the book, what does it mean?
In what it means to be a Christian. Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, in that first part, he mentions that biblical character of Job and how part of the meaning of Christianity is having that kind of real relationship with God where we don't kind of hold anything back.
And that's the wonderful thing about Job is it's very Jewish in that sense. Like you have the sense, like all the Jewish art I know that involves religion, they're always talking just in a very honest way with God. You don't get the sense of artifice.
Nope.
Like
It's real.
something in the Jewish relationship with God is like, I'm going to tell you how it is, and I don't like this, or I do like this, or whatever. So that's where Pope Benedict wants us to go, is to this amazing character of Job who, he's no baloney. He just talks to God.
Yeah, and he says, again, one of my most beautiful lines, I think, of this sermon, he says, somebody who refuses to, he says Christians have the temptation to want to approach life with the shades down and kind of keep things away from God as if we're going to spare him knowing details about our life.
Yes.
But he says that's not actually faith. That's not actually what it means to be a Christian. In fact, it's a profound form of skepticism that thinks that God can't handle it.
How interesting. That's so true. I mean, a great part of God has unveiled himself to us in Jesus. And then a great part of the spiritual life is unveiling ourselves to God, isn't it?
Oh,
what you just...
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazingly said, Sai. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Thanks, Simone.
You're welcome.
Nobody ever talks to me that way. Lori in Houston, Texas, listening on 1430 AM. We're so glad you're here. Lori, we're talking about what does it mean to be a Christian? Go ahead with your question or comment for Simone.
Hi. So my comment is that question, it struck me because there have been times where, like one time I went to get coffee and the barista, there's a certain twinkle in her eye and I was like, oh my gosh, she knows Jesus. I know Jesus too. And I actually started working there because I was like, I want to get to know this person because she's cool. She knows Jesus. And she did.
Wow.
Wow.
And I'm Catholic and she's not. But I did get to know her, and she had a lot of solid belief, solid foundational understanding of the Christian faith. But it's just, there's been times where, and the other day, it was I call them clients. I worked at a coffee shop, and a client who would come every Wednesday, and I don't work there anymore, but then for another day at the store, I happened to pass by him, and I'm like, wait, do I know you? But there's this sense that this guy's a Christian, and he had met with friends at the coffee shop, and they had a conservative talk or whatever. But I knew he was cared at least about his faith, but it was just this recognition of, and he did mention he was involved in his church, but it was just it reminded me a long time when I was in Sunday school, one of the questions that we were asked when we were teens was, what's the first thing that you want someone to know about you? And one wise student said, I want them to know that I'm a Christian. And I was like, oh, because I was thinking something that I'm cool, that I'm happy, that, I'm me, versus oh, I want them to know Christ. That's the first thing that they want. And I was like, I wonder what that, wow, what's that mean? And then it was I would encounter someone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how, but somehow I know that we both know the same person. We have
Isn't
a
that
mutual
something?
friend.
Yeah.
So for you,
And
Christianity is... Oh, I'm sorry, Laura. I was just going to say, for you, Christianity involves this, I've met this person, and the delight in meeting other people who you can either talk with them or even see in their face that they have met this person.
Yes, it's an encounter with a person, or encounter with a person who knows Christ. Christ is in them, and somehow it's this mutual encounter, recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Encountering Christ and others.
Yeah, that's a great setup to the second part of what Pope Benedict says about, and he's quoting Saint Athanasius, God becomes man so that man might become Christ-like. And you saw that, you said in the, I think, the twinkle
Yeah.
in
Right.
her eye, like, oh, I know the same person, we know the same guy, we know the same Lord.
Yeah. Right. And one imagines Peter probably got that when Andrew introduced him to, we come and see, we found the Messiah.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure Peter's very skeptical until the face-to-face with Jesus. And he
Yes.
said, oh, you have met the Messiah. This is the Messiah.
Yeah, Christianity remains a hypothesis until it's verification with the encounter.
Lori, I really like your call. Thank you very much.
I just real quick, I just heard this on the radio earlier, like the quote from Scripture is Philip and asked Jesus, well, show us the Father. And Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father.
Yeah.
I'm like, how is that supposed to work? Like, the two separate people, but I know they're one God, but then it's like, if you meet a Christian, you've met Christ, ideally, right?
That would be the
You're a
hope,
Christian.
wouldn't it? That would be the hope. I have to say, on some days, I'm sure there are people who meet me that don't meet Christ. I'm going to go with maybe north of 300 days a year, but on some days, that's how it works, Lori. Yes.
That's great.
We'll pray for you.
Well, thank you, Lori. Thanks. Let's pray for each other. God bless you. That was a wonderful call. The number is 888-318-7884. What does it mean to be a Christian? We'd love to hear your take on that or your question on that. Maybe it's something that you struggle with. Maybe you're considering Christianity yourself. Maybe you're already a Christian and would like some help in that area. 888-318-7884. So you've given us 2 out of the 3.
I have.
Can I have the third?
Sure.
Can we have the third one?
The third one's about, of course, we're going to get to it, love. The meaning of Christianity, love.
I have to say that's a tough one for me, Simone. And it's a tough one because everything is about love now.
Right.
Like, I feel like when we say, I'm not saying that you're wrong or that, who's the guy that wrote this? Some theologian? Pope Benedict was wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that when you talk about the encounter, the relationship, the reality of the person, I feel like, okay, there's something there we can still hold on to and call Christian. But for some reason, love, the word is so distorted. I don't know how else to put it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Or-
I mean, I do know what you're saying because we kind of fashion love around what we want it to mean.
Yeah.
Instead of and actually another way of addressing the tension that you're noticing, and that the way that Pope Benedict talks about it is if love is enough, right? We can say that love in its totality is enough. Then why do we need faith? This is a question he asks. Why do we? Or in another,
He always does that.
He always does.
Like some question that you never thought of, and then you go, that's clearly the question I should have been asking this whole time.
Right,
He
right.
always does that. Okay, so why do I need faith if love is enough?
Yeah. So should I answer or do you?
No, I think we should we should do a
just
whole
leave it
show
out
and
there?
not
Just
answer
go-
that.
Go read it. I know. Well,
Yeah, no, please answer.
I mean, it's an incredible question, right? Because in the earlier part of the homily, he'll talk about, there has to be something more to Christianity than just ecclesial dogma. What does he say? He's so funny. Ecclesial dogma and the burden of ecclesiastical dogma and doctrine. And
Yeah,
he's
right.
like, well, there's got to be something more to the substance of Christianity that makes people belong to this thing. Because if it was just all this burden, why?
Yeah.
Why? But if it's true that the faith is more than just my moral coherence, because I fail at that anyway, that is connected to why faith and love go together, or why he'll say that when it comes to love, it is precisely at that point of faith that love actually begins. What he means by that is when I realize I have this shortfall, when I realize I can't keep the commandments well, right? Then I have to get to the point where, I'll just read him. Ultimately, faith means nothing other than admitting that we have this kind of shortfall, opening up our hands and receiving and accepting a gift. It's when I've said I've done everything, and this is where true loving then begins, because I now have to receive something.
Yes, yeah. So in a certain sense, faith is the doorway to receiving love. I just can't have it without
exactly.
that. Yeah, which is, it's so sad because the world tries so hard and proposes all these ways of being my best self or whatever, or
Yep.
putting it out to the universe. And the fact is, you can't do this.
Yeah, no.
You're going to need God to do it for you.
Yep.
Put your faith in him and he'll do it.
Yep. So he says, faith is thus that stage in love which really distinguishes it as love. It consists in overcoming the complacency and the self-satisfaction of the person who says, I've done everything. I don't need help. No, I do need help.
I do need help. Yeah,
I do need help.
Right, and I can rely on that help.
Yep.
I mean, faith is the determination that I can rely on the love of God for that help. 888-318-7884 is the number. Simone Riscala is here. As you can probably guess why. She's just become one of our favorite people to have on the air with us. Smart and filled with the Spirit of God, and that's what we're trying to be. If you've got questions about what it means to be a Christian, 888-318-7884.
Want to know more about the origins of the Catholic Church? Joe Heschmeyer explores the beginnings of Christianity. In the early church was the Catholic Church. Joe digs deep into the words and actions of those who lived right after the apostles to refute anti-Catholic claims of how the faith was lived back then. Order your copy of The Early Church Was the Catholic Church today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
As Catholic apologetics have gotten stronger, Protestant responses have gotten stronger as well. And now they have their own answers to rebut the standard Catholic proofs. Don't fret, we've got you covered. In his new book, Meeting the Protestant Response, apologist Carlo Broussard gives well-reasoned biblical answers to Protestant comebacks. Order your copy of Meeting the Protestant Response today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
What if the voice of your deepest doubts about Catholicism rose up in the form of a human being and challenged you to defend your most foundational beliefs? That's the task apologist Trent Horn took upon himself in his new book, Devil's Advocate, a dialogue with his own best objections against the faith that he professes and defends. You can stand up against your doubts, and Trent will show you how. Pick up your copy of Devil's Advocate today at shop.catholic.com or at a good Catholic bookstore near you. We're just throwing out the groovy music on any guest now. It's like, Simone, do you even appreciate the groovy music?
I mean, yeah, I do.
Okay, you really had no choice but to say yes. A little bit of Thursday groovy music, and Jimmy will be here second hour, and we'll do open forum and call and talk about whatever you like. This hour, a very simple question: what does it mean to be a Christian? I do think the world gets it wrong. What is more heartbreaking is that we Christians get it wrong all the time. As a matter of fact, if you say it's an encounter, it's an encounter that requires a constant re-encounter, a constant deepening and solidifying and gaining confidence in that encounter, or else it's just going to die.
That's right. Like any relationship, it needs to be stirred up.
Yeah, right.
Stirred up.
Yeah, which I don't. For some reason, sometimes even among Catholics, there's a disconnect between that relationship, however advanced it is with Jesus, and the sacraments. And I don't think enough people know the way you deepen that relationship is through the sacraments, and they will do the work that they promise to do. Like you can have faith that if you receive the Eucharist, if you sit with Jesus in the Eucharist, certainly if you're baptized and confirmed and all that those, Jesus didn't give us those just on a whim.
Right.
Those are intended for relationship.
Yeah.
They don't make any sense outside of relationship, and they're powerful in the relationship.
Yeah, they're powerful in the relationship because assuming you're stirring it up in the relationship, you're going to be really well disposed to receive the sacraments, which doesn't mean like, oh, now I'm so perfect I can receive. No, but precisely like you've been in it in the relationship, and so when you go to the sacraments, you know what they are, you know what they can do, you have faith, and then you can let them operate on you.
And they do operate.
Yeah.
They like I know at my, I'm not young anymore, but at least at my age, I have figured out one thing about Christianity, which is they operate. They do the thing, and that you make advances in the spiritual life, or you become able to do things that really are humanly impossible, which I always tell people, like the real superpower that the Eucharist can give you is the power to forgive. And I know in my own life, I didn't have that power.
Yeah.
I did not have the power to forgive.
It's not a natural power.
No, and I know that where I have forgiven, and I'm not like, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I had some terrible life where I had tons of things to forgive. I'm just not a forgiving person. But you can't be a human until you forgive. It's a trap you're in. Yeah. And the sacraments made it possible. Nothing else made it possible.
Love.
Yeah. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. I am going to go back to the calls in just a second. But we do have lines open if you'd like to talk with Simone about what it means to be a Christian. What does it mean to be a Christian is our question this hour. 888-318-7884. You have a whole stack of notes. What else you got for me on what it means to be a Christian?
I mean, you were talking earlier, Cy, about the whole, moralism on the one hand, rules, and then, just the emotions and sentimentality on the other. Well, it's connected so much to the fact that truth and love are the same thing.
What?
Yeah, they're the same thing. Yeah, I know. And
you're gonna have to explain that.
Well, God is the truth, and God is also love. And so when okay. Yeah, and this, I was thinking about this recently because over at Endow, I interviewed this young man who was living as a woman for 8 years, and it was him falling in love with the truth that led him out of that lifestyle. So
tell me about his encounter then, because I assume you talked about that in the interview.
Yeah, I mean,
there's he lives as a woman for 8 years, and meets Jesus. How? What happens?
So I mean, this might upset some people, but this, he basically was invited to go to mass, but this church was teaching heresy, So
wait, a Catholic parish teaching? So give me. I'm only kidding,
they were.
Yeah. Well, give me an idea. Paint the picture of the parish for me.
I mean, rainbow flag waving parish. No,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Baptizing him as a woman. That.
Right.
So, and in fact, that actually, I mean, he went there when he was still identifying as a woman. But the catechesis, the RCA program, was so weak, he didn't convert right away. So it's very interesting.
He didn't convert which way? To Christianity?
To Christianity.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because he wanted more deep intellectual life.
Isn't that something?
It's just so fascinating.
But what he did receive at that...
What he did receive was a community.
Yeah, and a welcome.
And a welcome. They welcomed him in.
Isn't that something? How powerful a community and a welcome is.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and so he ends up converting, and then... he said after about a year of receiving the sacraments, he no longer wanted to dress as a woman and identify as a woman. He's like, I'm a man. And he says, this is my story. This is, I don't want to say, this is going to happen for everyone. But he said, the sacraments led me out of this life. Yeah.
So is he still...
And so, but now he goes to the traditional Latin Mass, which he said would never have evangelized. He wouldn't have at all gotten to that. He would never have gone near that church when he was still identifying as a woman. But now it's his home parish.
Okay, so here's the Catholic Church. This is really something to think about. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Here's a person who was led to the fullness of the Catholic faith, receiving the sacraments, baptism, Eucharist, and decides that the place for him to celebrate the Eucharist is in a traditional Latin Mass community. But that traditional Latin Mass community never could have been the community that he started in. He never could. He wouldn't have gone there.
Yeah, and then he says, like, look, here's how the Holy Spirit worked. Through this church that was, we would say, the reduction of the faith to sentimentality, to feelings.
It was
right?
a sentimental church.
It's a sentimental church, right?
Yeah.
And then now he's worshiping in a church where he says is very Pharisaical, right?
Oh, really?
And he says, and he goes, and they're both wrong.
Very rules-based
right.
church is what you're saying.
Very rules-based church. They would never have welcomed him. He goes, so, and he says they're both wrong. Because we have to find a way for us to be actual Christians. Now, it's his parish and he loves those people. He also loves the people that evangelize him into the parish, but they're both wrong.
Yeah, but isn't God wonderful the way that he works? I mean, because what God wanted out of all of this was this man.
Right.
He wanted him.
He wanted him.
He wanted him in relationship with him. He wanted him in heaven. He wanted him whole and healthy and alive and not living a lie.
Yeah.
And it was through a frail, human, broken church, both in its rainbow flag manifestation and in its overly pharisaical other manifestation.
Yeah.
And he got him to it. That's how powerful the relationship with Jesus is.
Exactly right. But that's the relationship between truth and love, is that the tension existed within these broken communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also striking to me that what you're saying is that in the sacraments, something happened to him where he was more willing to live in the truth. It sounds like what I was saying for me about forgiveness.
Yeah.
Was it wasn't like I decided or chose to let go of the things I was angry about.
Right.
The sacrament moved that.
The grace did.
The
grace was real.
And for him, he didn't go to the Catholic Church thinking, I need to go back to living as a man. That's what God made me to be. He came to that first because of the encounter.
Right. He came because his friend invited him to the encounter, the welcoming community, and then he really put himself into the intellectual life, into the truth. That eventually converted him from all the books he was reading. But then that wasn't enough to get him out of the lifestyle. It was the sacraments, he says.
Yeah, the sacraments have that power.
Yeah.
888-318-7884. So you're saying I should just be a bad Catholic? That those are the... or just be a mediocre? Because that's not the message.
No.
No.
That's not the message at all. Here's what Pope Benedict says. He says in the meaning of Christianity, and it remains true, consequently, that those people who are truly loving, who are as such also believers, may be called Christians.
Those people who are truly loving. That's a hard place to start. I mean, and then what's the second part of it?
Who are, as such, also believers. Meaning that, remember that faith, that shortfall.
Right.
Hey, I need to be given something.
Right.
I believe that you have something that I lack.
That's what a Christian is.
That's what a Christian is.
That's what it means to be a Christian.
That's what it means to be a Christian.
I love, and therefore I'm faithful. I love, and therefore...
Because I've received
love. And that's kind of a devastating judgment, because that's not actually what a lot of people experience when they walk into a Catholic church. There's some places where you do, and some days when you do, but I wonder how good a job we're doing of that. Like that traditional Latin Mass community, they could be welcoming to a man in a dress.
Yeah, if they wanted to, they could. Would they? That's the question.
Is that right? And certainly there's judgments that have to be made, and there's
it's very difficult, right?
Yeah, like you got to know, like some things you can't walk into church in a certain way. Like the church has to have limits and standards like everybody else, but on the other hand, God wanted this man. Am I the kind of Christian that could have helped this man into the church, or am I not that kind of Christian? I got to ask myself that. Yeah. Is my parish the kind of parish that could have helped this man to where God wanted him to be, or is my parish not that kind of parish?
Yeah, are we willing to take the emotional, spiritual, intellectual hits to create these spaces of hospitality where we can allow ourselves to be emotionally uncomfortable in front of the person that we're trying to disciple?
Well, do you want me to answer that, or is that a hypothetical question?
It's just it's the call.
But I love this conversation because we're always answering intellectual questions and all that. That's kind of what we do here, and that's what you do in many ways. Mm-hmm. But absent the love of the other person, I'm not a Christian. Right. The real love of the real person in whatever circumstance they are, I'm not a Christian.
Yeah. And Thomas says it well when he says that knowledge, the intellectual life, it should lead to love.
Yeah.
It should.
And it does. I mean, for very many people. Like, I know lots of loving Catholics. I wouldn't say we're not. There's lots of them. Yeah. The question is, institutionally, are we loving? And are we so divided from one another?
And culturally. Yeah. Culturally, do we know how to, if we say to so-and-so, hey, walk into a Catholic parish, are spiritual mom and dad going to be there waiting for you? I don't know.
Yeah, in a lot of places you don't know. You don't know. Right. 888-318-7884, the number. We do have other callers. I've been monopolizing our guest, Simone Rizcala. We'll come back and take your questions or comments about what does it mean to be a Christian with Simone Rizcala right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Let me give you the number one more time, 888-318-7884.
Hello, this is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Keep your dial tuned to Catholic Answers Live.
You've heard that St. Paul Street Evangelization supports hundreds of teams of evangelists sharing the good news. But did you know that some of these teams are public prayer stations? Set up a sign on the sidewalk and offer prayer and encouragement to those you encounter. Everyone needs prayer. Try this new method of witnessing to Jesus. Contact St. Paul Street Evangelization to get started at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
EWTN, Communicating the Faith.
I've only been Catholic for a little over a year. I converted from Baptist. My wife and mother-in-law did too. Listen to you guys every day. I'm really enjoying it.
I always enjoy listening to you. Your folks are great. I hope you go for many more years.
You guys have such a wonderful program. I've been a part of EWTN for years now, and I love to listen to it every day.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest is Simone Rizcala. We're talking about the uncomfortable and controversial topic of what does it mean to be a Christian. Because if it doesn't cost you something, it's probably not Christianity.
Amen.
That's all you got for me. Amen. I'm going to the phones. No, that's fine. I'm going to the phones. I'll get these people will get you talking. You don't need me to do it. Nikki, Portland, Oregon, watching on YouTube. We're glad you're here. Nikki, go ahead with your question or comment about what it means to be a Christian. Nikki, we're not hearing you. Are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm here. Hold on just a second.
Oh, yeah, it's a radio show. We're not doing anything.
Can you hear me?
Oh, we got you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Can you
Nikki,
hear me?
we can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me well, but why don't you go right to your question or comment for Simone, and then we'll see if we can have a conversation.
Okay. So yeah, I hear you guys in the background, but can you hear me? So, hold on.
I think I know what it means to be a Christian. There's the virtue of patience that's part of being a Christian. And yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So, here's my question. So I'm coming out of Protestantism. I spent most of my days, the last 3 days, just helping my Protestant friends move. And just been like in a lot of attack, and I guess I had to just pull over and was just so overwhelmed.
Who's attacking you, Nikki?
I just feel like I'm being asked questions that yeah. So like a lot of the beliefs, they don't understand the beliefs, and I understand that. When I was a Protestant and when I was a Jewish atheist, I didn't get it either. So I'm trying to have compassion for it, but a lot of the times I just don't want to engage in dialogue. And it seems like they want to engage in dialogue. They want the answers. I'm just there to clean their bathrooms, move their crap, nothing more than that. But they want these answers. And so when I got done today, I was just like in tears, and I don't know the best way to help them. I just want to maybe show up for them, help them move, just show them a little Christian charity, but they want more. And maybe I'm not prepared for that.
Yeah, that sounds like it's perfectly okay to not be prepared. But Simone, what do you want to say to Nikki?
Yeah, I think sometimes we feel like there's like this urgency to like rush through conversations, or you just have to have your like Twitter soundbitey quick answer to things. But when it comes to the faith and the intellectual life, especially the Catholic Church, like to understand one thing means you have to understand like 10 other things. So it takes time. So I think if you're able to like slow them down a little bit and just say, hey, I would love to talk to you about that. That requires a 45-minute conversation. Do you want to have a coffee where we can talk about it? I think slowing people down just really helps with apologetics, instead of feeling like you have to be like an expert on the spot as you're like rushing and trying to run these errands for them.
But as far as the people who are, it sounds like there's a kind of proselytizing going on. And I think Nikki's experience is also instructive to us how not to talk to other people about Christianity, because clearly it's driving Nikki crazy. Yeah, it's a relationship thing. Christianity is a relationship thing. So then it's going to be transmitted through relationship. If they don't have the capacity to like slow down and cultivate a relationship with you, and they just want to treat you like a jukebox where you just put a coin in and where's their answer? You can send them to Catholic.com if they want to get answers. But I wouldn't stress out about it. I would just slow it down. Nikki, we have a book here called Why We're Catholic, and I think you might enjoy it. And if you'd like it, I'd be happy to send it to you, because it sounds like you faced a kind of pressure about the whole thing, and I'm sorry about that.
I already got that book. I love it. If there's another book, like How to Be... No, I've read Trent Horn's book. You just sent it to me.
Oh, we did? Okay.
So, yeah. So I've got a lot of the wisdom and the knowledge, but basically I just want to be their friends, and they have a lot of questions, and I guess I'm not in the space where I can do both at this point. I just don't have that skill set. I can either help them out,
and they don't,
either for them.
And are you not able to tell them that, or they're not able to hear it?
They're not able to hear it.
Well,
too bad.
Too bad for them.
You're just going to have some boundaries.
They're going to have to deal with the fact that you don't want to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not a bad person for saying I can't engage these questions if that's what you're looking for.
We have lots of other good books. Edgar and Jordan, if I leave Nikki on hold, will you just give her any book that she wants from the Catholic Answers catalog? God bless you, Nikki. I'm moving because now all of a sudden everybody wants to talk to Simone. So Mike in Texas, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Mike, go ahead with your comment or question for Simone on the topic of what does it mean to be a Christian?
Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation. I'm involved in an ecumenical group, and as a former New Ager who was raised Catholic and became agnostic and came back to the church much out of trying to prove it's wrong, one of the challenges I have in talking to Buddhists and what I call New Age practitioners is, and Christine Watkins, I'm not sure if you know who Christine is, she's written several books on this, is how do you have a conversation with people that are what I call Pollyanna people? They just want to be happy. They want to amuse themselves. Mm-hmm. They do everything they can to run from any kind of stress in life. And when I try to, talk to them about how you trust God through going through life's ups and downs, it's almost like they don't want to hear it. And I don't like preaching at people. I like dialogue. And would you be so kind as to give me some advice? Because I have really good friends that are just aloof. Are they comfortable? Every New Age book that comes out. Well, they're comfortable from their appearance. How's that?
Yeah.
Plastic surgery and People Magazine and all that crap. And I'm just like, and these are people that go to church. They're creasters maybe once or twice a year, but They read every New Age book that comes down the road, and they're always searching. So
Okay,
where's
Simone?
a good place for them to start?
I mean, if they're not interested, I don't know what you can do with that. Is there any opening that they've given you? Is there, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. A lot of them are ex-Catholics, unfortunately, or they're ex of some kind of Christian sect, but due to scandal in the church and whatever else, they look for reasons not to practice. And, we all know one of the scourges in life is materialism. And I see so many people go down that path thinking, well, if I just get this new car and this new diamond and this new house, I'm going to be happy. And it's a never-ending uphill battle where I tell them all the time, you put the treadmill on 10, you're eventually going to fall on your butt. So they run into this, but they don't understand that there's really simple truths in not just Catholicism, but Scripture in general. And for whatever reason, they choose every false god. And these are bright people. And I really don't know how to have a conversation with them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what I try to do with my friends who are of the kind that you're talking about is I pray to the Holy Spirit. I ask for divine appointments. I ask for openings. And because I think you're right. We don't want to be preachy. And we can't compel people into faith. It's a gift. But, when my New Agey-ish friend will say, I just cried out about XYZ, that's my opening to say, and who did you cry out to when you were crying out about that problem? Were you crying out into the universe?
Yeah.
A person? A God? Because we do believe in a personal God. We believe in 3 persons and 1 God. So with New Agers, I mean, they use language like manifesting and all this kind of language. And I just kind of look for places where I can get them a little bit closer to a more human experience by talking about my experience. So if my friend is crying out about problem XYZ, I say, oh, yeah, when I have that problem, I cry out to God, who is a person who is going to respond to me in a personal way. That's much more satisfying than just, this like abstract universe that I'm talking to. So I just kind of look for openings like that.
We have a book here called Just Whatever, and it's basically a book about how to share the good news with people who are indifferent. And this is a terrible problem, actually, indifference. And you don't see that that many indifferent people when life is hard. It's usually when life has become too easy for people. And as you said, that materialism. So I want to send you the book, Just Whatever. And it's just got strategies. It's full of various strategies you can use to try to share with people the good news when they're just not interested in the good news. And frankly, they don't feel that they need it because they feel like they're doing pretty good. And they feel like they're doing pretty good because our society provides all kinds of goods and gives you decade upon decade in which you can just not think about death at all. And you can just go on. But what's his name? Oscar Wilde, the great writer Oscar Wilde, said something. I can't remember exactly how he said it, but essentially that Catholicism was, not, in his view, it was not a good religion to live in, but it was a great religion to die in. It's got everything you need to die with. And he did actually die to Catholic.
He did. I mean, at some point, you're going to be upset about something, in which case God, like Lewis says, screams to us in our pain. He whispers in our pleasures, but he screams in our pain. So we wait for the pain points, and then you're opening.
Simone Riscala is our guest. Tell us again about Endow, because lots of people are just probably coming to us now, and it's important that we get all these church documents. And I think there was a time when the documents were shorter, frankly, like you could read them all the way through, and then there used to be kind of more of a Catholic community to read them in, like the pastor would have and a lot of that's missing now. So what do you all do about helping people to read the documents of the church?
Yeah, so we take important church documents and we make them accessible into these study guides that women can use in 8 to 12 week study sessions. So if there's a church document that you're wanting to read and it's in our curriculum and you're a woman, check us out, endowgroups.org.
Simone Riscala has been our guest. For those of you here in San Diego, she'll be giving a talk tomorrow night at St. Therese Parish in Carmel, in Carmel Valley. Is that right? St. Therese Parish in Carmel Valley. About 7 o'clock it'll start, but if you get there at 6:30, there's like an endless supply of cookies and tea and coffee and all that stuff. Cheeses, grapes. I went straight to the cookies, but I guess there's other stuff there too. All right, coming up next, Jimmy Akin, and we'll do a full hour of open forum. Call with any question you've got, 888-318-7884. Simone, thank you very much.
Thanks, Si.
Looking forward to doing it again sometime. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. As promised, Jimmy Akin here with us this hour for a full hour of open forum. Your calls welcome on any topic, 888-318-7884. Open forum is open to anyone and open to anything, especially when Jimmy's here. We mean anything. 888-318-7884 is the number call, 888-31-TRUTH. Jimmy is senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, the author of a whole bunch of things, including A Daily Defense, 365 Days to Becoming a Better Apologist, which is now a podcast. You can find out about that at Catholic.com. He's also the proprietor of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Hello, Jimmy Akin.
Hello, Cy Kellett, host of Catholic Answers Live.
Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate. So few people give you the full respect of your name and title.
Yeah.
What do we got dropping tomorrow on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World?
Tomorrow we have part one of a two-part look at the paranormal practice of dowsing, where people use sometimes they may use rods or sticks, but they or pendulums, but they try to find items, locations through psychic means. The classic version of this is looking for water so you can dig a well on your farm. And dowsing's been very popular for a number of hundred years. It's actually used in a lot more ways than just finding water. Even back in the day, they would use it to find minerals like iron or gold. Today, they use it to find oil, and they use it to find missing people and diagnose medical conditions.
Wow.
So there's a lot of applications for it. There are a couple of special things about the look that we're going to do at dowsing. One of them is I have a guest who is himself a dowser. He's Dr. Paul Smith. He was one of the government's original remote viewing psychic spies in the Defense Department's Stargate program. But one of the things they found with remote viewing is they could view the target, but they couldn't tell you where it was. And so they use dowsing to supplement their remote viewing efforts. And so he's going to be talking about his experiences using dowsing as part of the Defense Department. The other thing that's kind of special about it is when we look at it from the faith perspective, wow, there is going to be a big surprise.
Really?
Yeah. I was very surprised when I dug into the Catholic Church and its history with dowsing and what the Vatican itself has said about dowsing.
How interesting. Oh, I'm looking forward to that because I tried it as a child.
Did you?
I have no idea. My brothers and I must have seen something on TV about it. So out to the forest we went with a stick that looked like it could do the job, and then we dig a hole. I don't think we found water.
Did you find anything?
I can't remember finding anything, but it was an adventure for a day. Trying dowsing. Is it always using a stick, or can you use? Are there no? Oh.
There are other forms. The classic stick that people see being used is called a Y rod because it's shaped like the letter Y. There also are rods that are shaped like the letter L, and they're called L rods. Pendulums are also used for dowsing. And then there's what's known as deviceless dowsing, where you're not using any device, you're just using your own body.
Oh, all right. All right. Well, I'm very interested in the faith connection. I'm interested to hear what you came up with.
That'll be in part 2 of the discussion.
Mysterious.fm is where you can go, or you can just type in Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, and you will get there. Hundreds of episodes now available. Tomorrow, dowsing. I'm a bit surprised. I had forgotten all about dowsing, but I'm looking forward to hearing about it. And is it practiced everywhere? Like, is it kind of one of those things where it's kind of ubiquitous? People have.
Well, it's historically it's been used in Europe, but these days it's spread all over the world.
Gotcha. All right. 888-318-7884 is the number here. When Jimmy's here, the lines fill up quickly. As a matter of fact, I can tell you they fill up in less than 5 minutes and 30 seconds because that's what they just did. We got a full set of phones, so off we go to those phones. Our friend Emma in Hayden, Idaho, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Emma, nice to have you back again. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Thank you. So I've heard the answer a million times, but I'm kind of dense, so I need to hear it a million more times. When it says in the scripture that Mary did not know Joseph until, because that's the word my Protestant friends are hung up on. And I've heard like he rose again. Please explain it to me so I can tell them logically.
About Jesus rising again, or Mary not
being a virgin.
Mary
being a virgin.
Okay, well, in the Greek text of the Gospel of Matthew, it does use the word heos, which is an equivalent of the English word until. In English, the word until frequently implies a change of state. So if you say, I stayed at work until 5 o'clock, that could suggest I left work after 5 o'clock. And that change of state is common, but it is not universal, even in English. To give an illustration of that, in the Old Testament, King David had a number of wives. The first one was named Michal. And Michal had, at least at a certain point in her development, a kind of some airs of haughtiness. She was married to the king. And at one point, David is bringing the Ark of the Lord to Jerusalem, and he's caught up in religious fervor, and he dances in front of the Ark. And she viewed that as a common, unroyal, unregal thing to do. She looked down on David for the fact that he danced in front of the Ark of God. And we're told by the inspired author that as a result of this, she had no children until the day she died. Kellett, does that imply that she then died and started having children?
I finally know I'm going to get this one right. No, she did not have any post-death children.
Okay. Well, I and most biology textbooks would agree with you. So this is an illustration of how even in English, until or till does not automatically imply a change of state. So we have to look at what else we know in a given case in order to find out, was there a change of state in a particular case? And when we do that with the Virgin Mary, we have other evidence, including from the New Testament itself, that indicates that she did not have later children. So, we frequently review that here on the air. I won't go through it all. One thing I will mention is that what is true of English in this regard is also true of Greek. Heos does not automatically imply a change of state. And we have early church fathers who were Greek speakers, like St. Jerome, who translated the Bible, saying that. They confirm that because this verse was discussed in the early church as well. I believe if you go to jimmyakin.com and look in the library and search on Jerome, once you're on the library page, I believe I have excerpts from St. Jerome where he talks about this. Also at Catholic.com, I know we have discussions of this. You can just type in Mary until Matthew 1:25 or the word Heos, H-E-O-S, as well as perpetual virginity, and you'll get a bunch of resources for free right there online at Catholic.com.
Emma, thanks very much. I appreciate you starting us off. We've got lots more folks on the line, so we'll take our first break and come back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Do you have a question but prefer to ask it privately? Catholic Questions can help. Go to CatholicQuestions.com to ask your question online, email us, drop us a letter, or give us a call. Longtime Catholic Answers Live apologist and author Jim Blackburn or another Catholic Questions apologist will be happy to assist you. Catholic Questions proudly supports Catholic Answers Live, so visit us at CatholicQuestions.com today. That's CatholicQuestions.com.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
Hosting Women Made New has helped me deepen my own faith, and I look forward to every weekend having those in-depth discussions with my guests. It's been such a blessing being a part of the EWTN family and carry on the mission that Mother Angelica started.
Women Made New, Saturday noon Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Jimmy Akin, our guest this hour. I have no guarantees, but I'm guessing there'll be a little bit of groovy music in our future, and it's open forum. That's what we do around here on Thursdays, and it's fun to do it. If you'd like to get involved, you got a question about the Catholic faith or anything else, give a call, 888-318-7884. Going next to Boise, Idaho. Aaron in Boise, Idaho, listening on, Boise, Idaho. I don't know what I was thinking. Aaron, I apologize. I know it's Boise, and I get in trouble with the people of Boise whenever I say Boise. Listening on Salt and Light Radio. Aaron,
you know what's causing that?
What?
In English, when we have a letter S between two vowels, it is frequently pronounced like the letter Z.
Oh, so it's just,
and so if you have the I and the E in Boise, and there's a tendency to apply the S to Z rule. That's why we say Jesus, not Jesus.
Oh, yeah, right.
And because it's between two vowels, it's an intervocalic S. It tends to be pronounced as a Z, at least in many circumstances. So a person who's not a native of Boise will look at that and say, oh, it should be pronounced Boise based on the intervocalic S.
That is exactly what it is. So, Aaron, I hope you will forgive my intervocalic S. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Oh, that's quite all right.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks for taking my call. I have a question about the topic of universal salvation. Specifically, the book That All Shall Be Saved by David Bentley Hart. If I may, I'd like to just rehearse the argument as I understand it, and then I'll ask my question. Is that okay?
Well, it's a call-in show, so it's got to be kind of quick, Aaron. Not too long. Go ahead.
So basically, a human being is a rational creature created by God with will and intellect. A person's will is only free if he pursues those ends which are proper to the will, which is the good. A person cannot be said to be fully free who ultimately rejects the only proper end, which is God. Therefore, it is impossible for a human being to freely will his eternal separation from God. So my question is this reasoning sound? If not, where does it go wrong? And if it is sound, why does the church teach that a human being can choose to go to hell?
Okay. Let's take the second question first. The reason that the church teaches that a human is able to go to hell is because we have very good scriptural evidence for that. There are multiple places in the New Testament that indicate that not everyone, that indicate at a minimum that hell is a real possibility for human beings, and that it's based on the decisions that they make in this life. So we have good evidence that humans are able to make the choice to go to hell. In terms of the first question, I haven't read David Bentley Hart's book. I'm aware of it, but I haven't read it, so I can't comment directly on it. But based on the way you summarized the argument, I would say that when the church talks about freedom in terms of pursuing the good, it's describing the proper exercise of freedom, that one is being fully free if one is doing this. One is being fully free in the way that is intended if one is pursuing the good. However, that doesn't mean that we don't have a kind of freedom that would allow us to choose sin, because obviously in this life we do choose sin. People choose to commit adultery and murder and tax fraud and all kinds of different sins. So we clearly have the kind of freedom that allows us to commit sins in this life. It's a misuse of freedom, and by committing the misuse of freedom, it damages our freedom. And as St. Paul describes it, we can become slaves to sin, where our freedom is diminished. But but we clearly do have the ability to choose sin, including grave sin in this life, and consequently the line of reasoning ultimately doesn't work, because just because we have, if it proved anything, it would prove too much. If the line of reasoning is freedom simply is choosing the good with no possibility of varying from choosing the good, then we wouldn't be able to commit sin in this life, and we obviously do. So the fact we can commit sin in this life strongly suggests we might then die in a state of grave sin. If we can choose grave sin in this life, there's a real possibility we may die in a state of grave sin in this life. We're not guaranteed a repentance. And consequently, hell remains a real possibility consistent with the divine revelation we have.
Aaron?
Okay, I've been really trying to find a way to refute this argument, and I find it very challenging. And my thoughts have sort of gone in that direction that you suggested. I still find it a challenging argument, though.
Well, I would suggest thinking about what I just said. In the future, I may have the opportunity to read the book, at which point I'd be able to comment more precisely on exactly the way David Bentley Hart constructs the argument. But at least based on the summary, that's what I would say.
Aaron, thanks very much. Appreciate that call. I'm going to keep moving because all the lines are full. Off we go now to Mesa, Arizona. Josh in Mesa, Arizona. Watching on Catholic.com. That's our website, Catholic.com. Josh, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Well, thank you for taking my call. Last night I had a dream about upside-down crosses. So every room I went to, there's an upside-down cross. So I wanted to see if there's any meaning behind it, if it was, a demon or the devil, trying to take a visit to me. So just any insight can provide.
Okay, so let me ask you a follow-up question. Has there been anything else going on that would suggest anything out of the ordinary?
No, the most recent event, just my twin daughters got baptized, but nothing out of the ordinary that I can think of.
Okay, congratulations.
So my guess is if I'm getting closer, thank you. If I'm getting closer with my family, with the Catholic faith, with my kids, the closer I get to God and my family, maybe, I don't know. So that's why I guess it's kind of perplexed and not understanding it.
Well, here's how I would approach it. The first thing I would say is that the upside down cross is an ambiguous symbol. Although for some people it may be an anti-Christian symbol and thus could be consistent with the demonic, that's not its automatic meaning. In fact, upside down crosses are specifically associated with St. Peter, because according to tradition, when St. Peter was crucified, he didn't feel worthy to be crucified in the same manner that Jesus was, and the Roman authorities obliged him by then crucifying him upside down and with his head towards the ground. And so the upside down cross is actually a symbol of St. Peter and in the history of Catholic iconography. So it's an ambiguous symbol. It doesn't automatically mean anything anti-Christian. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say concerns the nature of dream symbolism. Now, dreams can communicate to us in a symbolic way that contains messages from God or from the devil or from wherever, but that's not most of the time. Most of the time, the imagery that we see in dreams seems, and at least this is the attitude that's broadly accepted in the scientific community, most of the time the imagery that we see in dreams is non-symbolic in nature. It's just our subconscious reprocessing elements of our daily waking experience in certain ways to achieve certain goals, like helping us learn how to deal with stressful situations. So we have stressful dreams. And it could simply be since you're growing in your Catholic faith and you just had your daughters baptized, maybe the cross was on your mind and your subconscious decided it's time to have a stress dream so that we learn how to handle ourselves in stressful situations. And so what would be stressful to Josh? Well, he's religious. Maybe we take a cross and we turn it upside down and we copy and paste it all over his dream, and that will be stressful for him. And so he'll get a stress dream and learn how to handle stress. So that could be all there is to it. In terms of the demonic, so the demonic operates kind of on a spectrum. There is at one end of the spectrum kind of the background ordinary operation of demons, where they tempt people to do stuff, but they're just one source of temptation among many. It's not like every temptation comes from the devil. Classically, the three sources of temptation in theology are the world, meaning the example of others, the flesh, meaning our own disordered desires, and the devil. And the devil's just one of those three, and not necessarily the most active of those three. We see a lot of bad example, and we've got our own internal desires that we have to live with that can tempt us. So the devil's not even necessarily a big factor there. Then at the other end of the spectrum, you have situations where it is manifestly obvious that the devil is involved because you've got a full-blown possession with an alternative personality that's extremely averse to pictures of Mary and Jesus and is doing projectile vomiting and levitating off the bed and throwing 300-pound men across the room. And it's very obvious in that situation. And then there are situations that are kind of in the middle where it's debatable. Well, as long as it's not clear that the devil is involved, and you need more than just a strange dream to say the devil is involved, as long as it's not clear that the devil is involved, it's really not worth worrying about. Because, what are you going to do? If you think the devil's involved and it's not enough to go get a full-blown exorcism, well, then just say a prayer and let it pass. If a devil really is involved, actually focusing on that could make it worse. So I would say just put it aside, and if other things accumulate, well, maybe you want to revisit the idea. But for now, I would say it's probably just a stress dream and not really worry about it beyond that.
Josh, I hope that's helpful to you. Thank you very much for the call and the question. It's open forum, every line full, and off we go to Missouri. Joseph in Missouri, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Joseph, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Yeah, hey Jimmy, my question is, so I was reading an article on Catholic.com, and it was talking about, it was titled Woman in Combat Contraria Naturam, and it argued that it was immoral for women to be in the military, basically, and I was very convinced by the arguments. Then on the USCC website a little later, I found something that was they were talking about conscription. They talked about having the military an option for women. Now, it was by the administrative the administrative team, so I don't think it technically had bishop magisterial weight. Mm-hmm. I'm conflicted because on our sources I've been seeing that argument and things like that. So I was wondering if you could draw some light on that.
Okay, first of all, where was it that you encountered the claim that it's immoral for women to be in the military?
On Catholic.com, there were two articles about it. The one that actually made the argument was Woman in Combat Contraria Nature. I'm sorry, that's Latin. I may have mispronounced that.
That's okay. I know what it means.
It was basically argued that it's contrary to woman's nature to end life since they are oriented to producing life and giving life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so, well, the first thing I want to do is compliment you on recognizing that just because something is published by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, that does not make it a teaching document. It does not make it a document of the magisterium. There are substantial requirements that have to be met in order for that to be the case. And so it's great that you're aware of that fact. Would that more people were aware of the difference between what is technically a magisterial document and what is technically not. In fact, this week I just got done recording a course for the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics on that subject. So that'll be coming out. But I'm not familiar with the arguments, with the articles that you referred to, and so I can't comment on them directly. What I can say is that there is a long history of women being involved in the military in one capacity or another. There have been military nurses for a long time. There have been military who were women. There have been military secretaries for a long time. And if you look back in the history of just America, you won't find a lot of Americans having problem with those roles. But then there's the role of women in combat, which we'll talk about more after the break.
Right back with more with Jimmy Akin. Open forum on Catholic Answers Live. As Catholic apologetics have gotten stronger, Protestant responses have gotten stronger as well. And now they have their own answers to rebut the standard Catholic proofs. Don't fret, we've got you covered. In his new book, Meeting the Protestant Response, apologist Carlo Broussard gives well-reasoned biblical answers to Protestant comebacks. Order your copy of Meeting the Protestant Response today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
In These 12, The Gospel Through the Apostles' Eyes, best-selling author Rod Bennett gives a riveting re-examination of gospel events from the ground floor perspective of Christ's own hand-picked successors. In his trademark storytelling style, Bennett movingly depicts what it was like for the apostles to witness Jesus' teaching and miracles up close. Why did he call them, and what did he intend for them to do? Order your copy of These 12 today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Want to know more about the origins of the Catholic Church? Joe Heschmeyer explores the beginnings of Christianity. In the early church was the Catholic Church. Joe digs deep into the words and actions of those who lived right after the apostles to refute anti-Catholic claims of how the faith was lived back then. Order your copy of The Early Church Was the Catholic Church today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
There it is, a little bit of groovy music. Now it feels like a Thursday. Jimmy, groovy music, and open forum. Those three things make me feel like it's Thursday. And then after I leave sitting in traffic for a ridiculously long time. Those three things make me feel like it's Thursday. Joseph in Missouri is on the line. And essentially just asking Jimmy, is it moral for women to serve in combat roles in the military? Jimmy?
Yeah, so when it comes to combat roles specifically, I think we have to distinguish between what's preferable and what's absolutely mandatory. Sometimes in discussing policy matters, a policy may not be preferable, but it may not be intrinsically evil. And I think it's pretty easy to show that women serving in combat is not intrinsically evil. There have been numerous situations in history where, including Jewish history, where an opponent is, let's say, attacking a town, and the town does not have enough male members to defend itself, and so even the wives of the male townsmen will join in the fight because they need to protect them and their children. And if the men are not sufficient to protect the town, then the women need to help. And that's been recognized as a legitimate situation all the way down through history. Similarly, let's just scale it down to a very domestic setting. Let's suppose that you're at home, you and your wife and your kids, and an axe murderer breaks in. Or it's some other kind of home invasion. Maybe they got more than an axe. Maybe they got a gun. And maybe there's enough people participating in the home invasion that you yourself are not able to effectively defend your entire family against them. Well, in that situation, it's perfectly legitimate for your wife to join in the fight in defending your children in your home. And so that's a woman in combat, and that's legitimate. Now, one can certainly say women are oriented in a special way towards childbearing and giving life, and that's certainly true. That's why in cultures across the world, throughout history, it has been overwhelmingly men who have performed the function of warfare. Men are built by nature to be stronger, and especially upper body strength, and to have the kinds of skills. They're better at spatial relations, which makes it easier for you to attack and target an enemy. And men are built to be protectors and defenders in a way that women are not. Men are built for combat more than women are. But that doesn't mean women can never, under any circumstances, engage in combat. And so I think it's pretty easy to show that it's not intrinsically evil for women to serve in combat, but it is, in a sense, contra naturam, contrary to nature, at least the way things are normally should operate. Men are designed for combat in a way that women are not, and so it makes it appropriate for men to perform that function in society. Now, I haven't read the pieces that you've discussed, but I would assume that that's essentially the policy they're recommending. They're recommending the what would be the preferable policy, but that's not the same thing as saying under no circumstances whatsoever can this happen.
And you know what? I think I'm just going to leave it there and say thanks very much for the call, Joseph, because I am realizing the time and that that every single line is full. So thank you for the call. I do hope that was helpful to you. I'm going to go to Betty in Dixon, North Dakota, listening on 101.9 FM. Betty, thanks for the call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Thank you for taking my call. Do you believe in the book The Warning by Christine Watkins?
Well, it's a whole book, and so I would need to be a little more refined than just giving a yes or no, because there can be things in the book that are true and other things in the book that are not true. But in general, I do not have a lot of confidence in that book. I am aware of it. I have it. I've read it, and the reasoning and the data that are used in the book are not high quality. To cite just an obvious example, the book is in part dependent on a lot of unapproved apparitions. And one of the unapproved apparitionists in it is named Father Michel Rodrigue. He's a Canadian priest who claimed to be a visionary. I did an investigation of him on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. I believe it's episode 123. For episode 122, the immediately preceding episode, I did a look at the so-called warning or illumination of conscience that the book is about, and I concluded the evidence for it is actually not good. I mean, I can't rule out that God might one day give a broad-based illumination of conscience to people in the world, but the evidence that he will do such a thing is actually not very strong. And then in the next episode, I looked at one of the principal seers that Christine relied upon in writing the book. His name was Father Michel Rodrigue, as I said. And I did an investigation of him, and I concluded this man is a fabulist. meaning he is not telling the truth about a variety of things, including his own life history. He either is deliberately lying or deliberately exaggerating in a way that amounts to lying, or he is delusional and does not accurately remember his own life history. But one way or another, we have a disordered process going on with him that leads him to be unreliable in a demonstrable, provable way. He subsequently was denounced by both of his bishops because he's incarnated in one Canadian diocese, but he lives in another, and both of his bishops issued statements warning people against him. Yet he's one of the principal sources that Christine was relying on. So I have to say that I am not favorably impressed by the book, and if you'd like more information on why, I believe it's episodes 122 and 123 of Mysterious World. You could find them by going to mysterious.fm/122 and mysterious.fm/123.
Betty, thank you very much. As you probably heard me say, there's lots of folks on the line, so I'm going to keep moving, but thank you for the call. Logan in Nampa, Idaho, listening on Salt and Light Radio. Logan, you there with us?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Logan. I enjoyed your movie. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Hi, Jimmy. Thanks for being here and all you do. I have a question concerning fasting. So I'm doing a Exodus 90 challenge with some of my brothers. Shout out to Andrew and Nico. But we are really focusing on fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays. And I understand that's something that we should do as Catholics anyway, but specifically meat as well. Why do we practice that, and what is the benefit of us practicing fasting and fasting from meat on Wednesdays and Fridays?
Okay, well, when you say that this is something Catholics should do anyway, that's true on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. It is not something that the Church has said we should do the rest of the time. It's something that you're welcome to do as a spiritual discipline, but it is not obligatory, and we should not look down on people who do not choose to do it regularly. Because it's a matter of Christian liberty, and we shouldn't be looking down on fellow Christians for how they exercise their liberty. So, just a warning in that regard. In terms of its significance, well, fasting is denying oneself something that you could otherwise have, and it's thus a kind of a sacrifice. And so, by sacrificing having a meal when you otherwise could have one, you're making a sacrifice to God if you're doing it for a spiritual purpose, like you want to be closer to God, you want to grow in holiness. Also, the sacrifice of not eating because we have an inbuilt impulse to eat is something that is a good form of training. It can not only help you cure habits like overeating, it also can help you develop a transferable skill to where if I can say no to my desire in this area, maybe I can say no to my desire in other areas where I might be tempted to sin. And so it can be of assistance in growing in holiness. When it comes to meat specifically, meat is a unique food substance for humans. We are omnivores, meaning we can eat both plants and animals, but animal food is very high calorie. It contains lots of protein and lots of fat, and fat makes things taste better. And it also contains certain nutrients that are very difficult to get from plants. So meat is a very rich food. It is also hard to obtain because you can't just grow it on the ground like you could grow wheat or something, or you can't just pluck it off of a tree because it comes from animals, and they have to eat plants in order to grow the meat that we want to eat. So meat by its nature is harder to get in evolutionary terms than plant food is. And consequently, it is more highly valued, both for its nutritional and for its gustatory qualities, how much people enjoy eating it. It is people tend to enjoy having a burger more than they do a piece of lettuce. And so because of the sensual experience of eating meat and it's the greater difficulty in acquiring it and all of that, it is a high value food. And by denying ourselves a high value food, we are making a greater sacrifice. And that enhances the benefit of the spiritual discipline. And that's why on Ash Wednesday and the Fridays of Lent, we also abstain from eating meat. It different than fasting, but it's, in your terms, fasting from meat. It's more commonly called abstaining from meat, but that's the basic reason for it, because it's a form of sacrifice we can use to grow closer to God.
And Logan, that brings us to our break, so I will leave it there. God bless you as you undertake this spiritual undertaking. And we will take our break. Be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment. Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Do you love sharing the gospel and want to learn to be more effective? Join the St. Paul Street Evangelization online School of Evangelization. You will learn to build bridges of trust and make disciples by befriending strangers, proclaiming the gospel, inviting people to the church, and praying with others. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you are unable to give, we'll give you a membership at no cost. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
EWTN offers the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass live every morning at 8 Eastern and provides you with daily readings to follow along and enrich your experience. To be sure you don't miss out on the daily Mass or to get access to previous recordings, we can send a link to your email inbox every day. It's easy. Visit EWTN.com and click subscribe. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Jimmy Akin is our guest, and it is Open Forum. We're going to just keep working our way through these calls because we got a lot of them, and Nancy in Utah is next. Nancy's watching on YouTube. Glad you're here with us, Nancy. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. There.
So there. All right.
Yeah, it was me who was confused about here and there last week, too, when I called in. Hey, I have an online acquaintance named Christian Miller who uses a Celtic cross and to make a sextant. It's a kind of a cross and then a circle in it. And he's got some websites and he's on Facebook. I wondered if you've ever heard of him because he comes back, he postulates that from ancient Paleolithic and Neolithic hunters, gatherers, seafarers, and up through the Knights Templar used this type of instrument to build buildings and to cross the oceans. And then another thing, his first name is spelled Chrischton, and he's Crichton Edward McGregor Miller. Have you ever heard of him, and does his first name stand for Christ? Because that's what he's said at times.
Wow.
Okay, well, let's see. The name Crichton, I am familiar with Crichton, and I could see where it could be something like Christ's Town, that could get contracted to Crichton. However, according to the web search I just did, the boy's baby name Crichton can, depending on how it's spelled, mean border or boundary settlement or from the hilltop. So it doesn't appear that despite the cry on the front of it that it's related to Christ etymologically. So that's what I have to say about that. In terms of have I heard of him, I'm afraid the answer is no. There have been seafarers dating back to certainly the Neolithic, and I'm sure the Paleolithic as well. Sailors frequently use instruments to help them navigate, sextants and things like that. I don't know how much evidence we have for the use of such instruments that far back in history. We do have evidence of people crossing oceans in certainly by the Neolithic and I believe by the Paleolithic, where you have people arriving, for example, in islands in the South Pacific. I mean, the native Aborigines got to Australia at least 60,000 years ago, and they probably had to cross some water to do that. And in that part of the world, in the South Pacific, there are some amazing feats of stellar navigation where guys would get out in these canoes and be able to use the stars to navigate to go distant places and find them accurately in their inter-island commerce. But I don't know the extent to which they used instruments like sextants in doing that. That's something I would have to investigate further. Obviously, given the way a sextant is structured, you could build one out of a Celtic cross if you wanted. Celtic crosses not only have the long vertical staff and the shorter horizontal staff, they also have a circle around them, and that circle you could mark it off in degrees or other units of measurement and use it in the fashion of a sextant. But I would want to see evidence regarding it being used in particular historical periods.
Nancy, I'm going to leave that there. I do hope it was helpful to you. Thank you very much for the call. I've got next on the line Vincent in British Columbia, Canada. Vincent, thanks very much for the call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi there.
Hi, Vincent.
With regards to a conditional baptism, my fiance is coming into the church at Easter.
Awesome.
She was baptized, kind of like bathtub baptism, by her grandmother, who is Catholic. So most likely legitimate baptism. Would she need to go to confession? Because, I'm just wondering if she needs to go to confession at her coming into the church or not.
Well, if she's committed any mortal sins since her first baptism, the answer would be yes. And it's typical in cases of conditional baptism that immediately before you do the conditional baptism, the person goes to confession to take care of precisely this problem. Because if the person is already validly baptized, the conditional baptism is not going to change anything. It's not going to remit any sins because baptism can be done only once. And so if the first baptism was valid, then she needs to be forgiven of the sins that she's committed since then, and that would be the sacrament of confession. So the typical way it's done when you have a conditional baptism situation is the person goes to confession first, often immediately before or at least shortly before the baptism, and then they get the conditional baptism. That's the way with me. I had a baptism in the Protestant community whose validity I doubted, and so I insisted when I came into the Catholic Church on having a conditional baptism. And I also recognized, okay, in case my first baptism was valid, I need to go to confession, and so I went to confession, and then I received the conditional baptism.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, no, that's what I suspected. The advice she's getting right now is that she doesn't from the pastor.
Well,
do you have any references that I can bring to him?
Well, I could. I mean, there are moral and pastoral theology handbooks that one could consult, but I would tend to handle it more simply and just say, I really want to do this. I want to go to confession first. and receive a conditional absolution, and that will help me be at peace. And if that's if most priests should be willing to respond to that kind of an argument, if the priest isn't willing to respond to that, if that doesn't solve the problem, then I'd say, I'm uncertain, I'm uncomfortable about this. I think we should check with the bishop. And between taking those two steps, first just saying, this is what I want, this will help me feel comfortable, that's likely to take care of the problem right there. And if it doesn't, the next step logically would be appealing to the bishop, although you could also call us off the air and we might be able to find you an additional print resource that you could use.
And I'll tell you what, if you want to call us off the air, that's fine. You can send an email to radio@catholic.com. There's various ways to get in touch with us, because we'd be happy to help further that. But let's follow that course that Jimmy recommended, and we'll see how that turns out. And what wonderful news, too, for coming into the church. So thank you very much for the call, Vincent. I'm kind of moving because I want to get Vanessa on in Burbank, California. She's been waiting, and Vanessa's watching on YouTube. Vanessa, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi, Jimmy and Sai. I have a question. How would one reply to what was the point of the temptations of Christ if he could not sin and therefore he would not give into those temptations?
So one of the things to be aware of is that the word that's in Greek that's translated temptation in a lot of our English Bibles also can be translated as testing. And so it's ambiguous whether the devil was literally tempting Jesus or whether he was testing Jesus. And that opens one possibility for what the point may have been. The devil may not have been sure if Jesus is the one. He may have known the Son of God is coming into the world sometime around now, but not be sure of exactly who it is. And then he, in learning about Jesus, may have had suspicions that he might be the Son of God. And so let's find out, because if he is the all-holy Son of God, he shouldn't give in to temptations. So let's really lay some on him and see if he breaks or not. If he breaks and gives in to the temptations, that means he's not the Son of God. But if he resists even the devil's most powerful temptations, then, okay, he's the Son of God. I better watch out for this guy. He's the one I need to focus on. I need to do what I can to try to thwart his ministry. So that may have been the purpose of the devil attempting to tempt or test Christ. He was trying to find out, is Jesus of Nazareth the Christ or not? There's also another possibility, which would be that the devil knew full well that Jesus of Nazareth was the Christ and was the Son of God, and that he was not going to give in to these temptations, but the devil's just malicious. He just wanted to mess with Jesus. He just wanted to put pressure on him and, make his life harder. And so in addition to the fasting and praying that Jesus was doing out in the desert, which is not a very comfortable mode of existence, the devil wanted to just pour some more suffering on him by hitting him with temptation as well, even though he knew full well he was never going to give in to it. So those, to my mind, would seem to be the two leading theories for explaining this. Either the devil didn't know that Jesus was the Messiah and was testing him to find out if he was, or the devil knew he was the Messiah and was just being malicious.
Vanessa?
There's one more possibility. I mentioned there's one more possibility, which is the devil was just stupid and thought that maybe Jesus would give in, and that would thwart Jesus's plans. Like if I'm able to get the Son of God to morally sully himself, he won't be a suitable sacrifice for the world anymore. So maybe he was just dumb and thought that Jesus might give in. But if I assume that last one is not the case, because the devil, being from heaven, should know better than that. But then, as they say, sin makes you stupid, so who knows for sure.
Vanessa, thank you very much for the call. I'm so glad we were able to get you on before we had to finish there. Jimmy Akin has been our guest. Tomorrow, as on every Friday, a new episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. This one on, do you say dowsing or dowsing? Dowsing. No.
Dowsing.
Dowsing,
It's an English word, so it's got this S for Z sound in there.
That's weird. That came up twice in one. Yeah, dowsing. All right. And you can find that at mysterious.fm or just put into your Google machine Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Jimmy, thanks. It was quick, but a fun hour. Thanks very much.
My pleasure, Cy Kellett.
That does it for us. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.